everybody. It is officially grid time. Grid time. Yes, so what I'm going to do, and I've already prepped a lot of this stuff ahead of time, I'm going to recreate this website, and I'm actually going to implement two grids. I'm going to have a grid inside of another grid. So how am I going to do this? Well, let me explain by virtue of a mock-up of some grid rows that you're going to see here. Okay, so what I decided to do initially is to figure out where are all my elements and create some grid columns. And I decided to begin with, we'll just use some fractional units. So these are what these numbers are, and I'll explain in just a moment. A fractional unit is, like if you notice, there are some gaps that are more narrow, some that are wider. So each of these with the two are about twice the width of these two smaller ones. Okay, so what we're trying to do is get all of our HTML elements into the grid. Right, and so we have this column on the left with just nothing in it, column on the right, nothing in it. And then we have a nav bar across the top. We've got this kind of like advertisement here. Then we got this we've got this sort of a tagline with a button, and then we've got these evenly spaced columns here, which this is going to be the grid within our grid. This is going to allow us to do grids in two different ways. Okay, so before we do it, we're going to start with the simpler one, which will be the grid within the grid to get our 4 columns evenly laid out. So we're going to do that first. Before we do that though, I want to give you some free code to get started. Let me show you what I got at this point. I got this code here. I've done some styling to get some of the content of what we are going to do today. So I styled the nav bar. I even did a little flexbox action in there. I got some buttons. I got some content. Our HTML is ready to go. I'm going to post this in the video link below. And I've got this GitHub gist and this, by the way, it says it's the Zola website. So I'm calling this the Zola project. So the Zola index page has the code here. You can just go to the link that I will post, and you can just grab the raw code here, or you can just copy it within the window. We also got the CSS. One of the cool things is, well, I say it's cool, I think it's cool, is that I'm using variables for my colors. And so if you have any questions about any of these, you can look it up. These are variables. Most everything is pretty generic. I did style the buttons. I did have a little bit of fun trying to figure out that, but I think I got it working right. Here's the navbar styling. I should point out that it does have a display of flex, the navbar, and I did justify content space between. Now let me show you the HTML to show you kind of what I'm doing here. I need to update that HTML. Let me do that real quick. Okay, yes, I did make one major change. In order to get the Zola on the left and these two items on the right, what I needed to do was create a nav, because they're both navigational items, but I decided to create a heading level 1 and wrap the link inside of it, and the link has an ID of logo, which is going to allow us to do some extra styling as a logo. And I think what I'm going to do is, if you look here, this text, I got it to display pretty much like it is, but I'm going to add the little logo to the left of it. I don't know if that's their logo or not. It doesn't really matter because I'm trying to work grid, correct? Correct. Okay, so these are both nav elements. You have the header one and the UL, and it just has a login, all that good stuff. Everything else is kind of in place, not much to talk about. So you can grab this code, stick it in the index.html, grab this code, stick it in the CSS. All right, so let's get to task. We're going to use the complete guide to grid, and what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of, do some grid template columns, rows, gaps, all right, which is going to allow us to create our 4-column layout. So let's go ahead, get your code in place. I'm going to open up my VS Code right here. I'm just going to close that. And I want to have my HTML on the left and my style on the right. So I'm just going to right click and split right on my CSS. And if you want to focus in on that, you can. If you grab the code, just paste it, and we're going to do our styling of the hero unit grid. We're going to do that here. And so I like having comments to sort of guide what we're doing. This will keep it centered. What we want to do is we want to basically take the element that has the 4 columns, and that is this section called ID of products, and it's got 4 divs with a class of card, which we can style later. For now, we just want to create our grid. So one of the things I noticed is we're going to want to scale back the sizing a little bit because there's some headers in there. So I'm going to put a hashtag products, and we're going to target that, the ID of products, and we're going to, like I said, reduce the font size. We'll reduce it maybe 90%, and then we're going to display it as a grid. And this is where it gets really cool. I was thinking about doing it with Flexbox, but with grid we can add gaps, we can make them even column. I think there's some better ways of doing it. I don't know why, I just think it is. So we're gonna do this grid template columns. Now in here, we're gonna do a repeat because they're even, right? Each one is the same amount. So we're gonna do a repeat. So we're gonna repeat 4 times because it is a 4-column layout. So I just do the 1FR, and then we're gonna add a little gap here, column gap, and we're gonna give it a gap of, I'm gonna just try 2EM. And I'm gonna save my changes. Let's take a look. So it's just the grid area. Let's go ahead and hit refresh and see if we got it. Oh, look at that, look at that. All right, so we've got that grid. Isn't that easy? Real easy to use. There are a couple things though. If we resize our screen and we get really narrow, that doesn't fit very well. I want to make it so it's more responsive. So let's go ahead and add a little responsive factor. Okay, so to do this, for our products, grid template columns, we could do a repeat like this. What we're going to do is instead we're going to try to automatically fit them using AutoFit. And so we're going to do an AutoFit, but instead of one fractional unit, we're going to have a minimum and a maximum using the min-max formula, or the min-max function. All right, so what would be the minimum width we want to do? Let's take a look. So I've resized it. I'm thinking of maybe the minimum might be this size here, and then the maximum would be, let's do a little inspect and see how wide that is. Oh, yeah, let's look at the landing page here. They're not that wide, honestly. There's actually a much bigger gap. We'll probably adjust that in just a bit. So I think this is a good width here. So let's find out. I want to just click it and find out what the width here. I like to just go to computed. So we're looking at a width of about 250 or so. So 250 pixels is not bad. So we'll just do a min-max 250 px minimum, and then a maximum of 1FR. Does that would work? No. Hold on a second. Okay, I guess it's right. So minimum 250 pixels, maximum 1 fractional unit. And so if you watch the way it scrolls, look at that. One thing I do think we should have some padding inside of the div for the class of card. So I'm going to go ahead and add that right now while I'm here. Let's put div.card, and then we'll just do some padding, and we'll just give it a 1EM all around. Save our changes, hit refresh. Hopefully that looks a little better. Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay, so at this point we got all of our code ready to go. And so if it's wide enough, there we have it. All right, and we're going to reduce this even more. Now it's time to do our grid. Now this is where it gets fun. So let's go back to the image I was showing here. So I think the best way to start out is figure out your grid lines for now, and then let's just use fractional units like I was explaining earlier. So basically we want grid, we're going to use the grid template areas. So we're going to go ahead and define all of these items in here as fractional units. Later on we'll adjust it as needed. Okay, so we had the 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1. So if you think about it, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different columns. Okay, so in the grid template area, let me explain what we're going to do, how we do it. We want to look, and we're going to scroll up here. I believe it's up a little bit higher. Yeah, we got an example here. I just want to show you that. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to name our areas. So we need to figure out what we're going to call our grid areas. I would argue the shorter the name, the fewer the text, the easier this is going to be. So you name each one, you figure out what you're putting where, and you just name it grid area and you give it a name. And then in the container we display it as a grid, and then we're going to do our grid template columns, and that's where I'm going to use those fractional units that I just showed you. For now we're going to make the template rows auto, and we'll deal with that after, probably in the next video, because we're getting low on time. And then we're going to set our grid template areas. And so for each of the columns, so in this case they have 4 columns, you're going to have to write out a piece of text in a space 4 different times on each row. This represents one row, this represents another, this represents another. The dot represents there's nothing inside. So it's just an empty grid. Okay, so let's go ahead and code this out, and then we'll go from there. So I'm actually going to code it above the products because I think it's important to do that. I'm going to do a hashtag hero and display this as a grid. All right, and let's get this going. So I'm going to go ahead and set those grid template columns. Grid template columns. I like the fact that it gives me this. Remember, it's 1FR, 1FR, 2FR, 2FR, and then 1FR. Later on, we can adjust those values. And then the grid template rows, we're just going to make them all auto. We can deal with that later. And then we're going to do grid template areas. And definitely like the auto completion in VS Code, because first time I was trying this out, I kept calling it grid areas and it just messed me up. Okay, so then I'm going to just hit enter here. I'm not going to do none. I'm just going to hit enter, and then I'm just going to do my rows. So that'll be one row, and then another, and then another, and I got to count them out. I got the nav, hero, sign up, tagline, products. So we got 4. We need one more row. All right, remember how they each begin with a dot and end with a dot? So the dot represents empty space, and if you look at the grid that we mocked up over here, on the image that I mocked up over here, the left is empty space, the right is empty space. This actually took me a while to figure out my lines for how to do it, and by having this all be part of the nav was good. Having to get this here also made it so it looks pretty much like, I think we can get it accomplished this way. Let's go ahead and try it either way. Okay, so actually I'm just going to replace all of those with, I'm just going to do a find and replace. Well, not really, I'm doing my own find and replace. Okay, we got that in place. Okay, we need to, before we do anything else, let's go ahead and identify each of our items. All right, so the first one is the hero nav, and so that's hero-nav, and then we're going to do our grid area, and then we're just going to call it nav. And then I like this, so let's just go ahead and copy that so I can make that a little faster. And then this is going to be this. This is the longest one. I can't believe it. Sign up dash discount. Paste. All right, grid area. We'll just call it DISC. DISC. Like that. Keep it short. Oh, disk. It thinks that's something out. There we go. Close enough. All right. And then the next one is the tagline. You might be going, where is he getting it from? Well, I'm getting it from each of these IDs right here. These are all of our elements. All right, tagline. I'm going to get rid of that, paste that, and we're just going to call it tag. Keep it short. Let's play tag. Products. Let's call it prod. Okay, this actually isn't too bad. So we name each of these areas, nav, discount, tag. All right, so then we have to kind of look at here. So the nav is going to take up 1, 2, 3, 4 of these columns with a dot on either side. So we're going to just type nav 4 times. Nav, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, I like to count. Okay, So that's going to create our nav row, and then on the next one, it's the discount. Discount is going to be 2 dots, 2 of these grid rows or grid columns, and 2 more dots. So we're just going to put another dot and another dot. Make sure you're spacing them out, and then it's discount. Copy paste is your pal, and that's how we do it. Okay, that's your discount tag. What is the tagline? All right, dot tag dot dot dot. I feel like I'm doing Morse code. Tag dot dot dot. And then finally, we have our products dot, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4 prods and a dot. Prod. Make sure you have those spaces. All right, here's the big reveal. Let's see if I got it right. We're gonna go over here, we're gonna hit refresh, and yes, we got it. Look at that. All right, there is a little bit more styling we haven't done that I will need to do, including a background image. Let's save it for the next tutorial. We're out of time. Stay tuned for that, but hey, you got yourselves some awesome grid work. And by the way, if you do it in the inspector, hover over that header hero and you can see all your grid lines. How's that for coolness? Wait a minute. Uh-oh, are we missing our dot at the end? We are. We're missing an area. Did you see that? All right, we gotta fix that. I think we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are we? Oh, 3. Good thing I checked in on that. Save your changes. Refresh. Now I'm liking it. That's even better. All right, hover over the hero. Hey, isn't that good? I wouldn't have caught it if I hadn't hovered over that in an inspector. So wha-bam, there you go. There's your grid. And then hover over products. We have another grid. We got our gaps in between. This is great. Stay tuned for the next tutorial when we do some background image stuff and make it look really good.